There we go.
There we go. Do you
All
know if we're
right.
supposed to be reading six poems total?
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure if
I
we were supposed to read six each or what.
No, just six total. So I picked out three of them and
Gotcha.
wrote down the notes of what we're supposed to define after each poem. So
Mm.
quickly for the professor. A speaker is in poetry refers to the voice adopted by the narrator. The tone is the mood implied by an author's word choice and the way that the text can make a reader feel. A strophe is any separate section or extended movement in a poem, distinguished from a stanza, and that it does not follow a regularly repeated pattern. And a stanza is a division of a poem consisting of two or more lines arranged together as a unit. Those are the things we're supposed to talk about after the poems. So do you want to switch off and I read one and then you read one and then back and forth?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. You get to start. What's your
All
first
right.
poem?
I'm going to start with Spanning the Spectrum. If I can find the page now. Oh no. Okay. Struggling to say ascent and descent in a language that wasn't my mother's, I see it, the steeples and rotundas. Bread rises in the oven. 1 hour arrives with feather and wing. I've brought myself here again beneath the changing blue, a saturated sky spanning the spectrum of a dream realized by walking the hills and dusty paths. The idle fiddle beneath the tree. After opening my eyes, the yellow galoshes with straps and buckles weren't worn for those 99 rainless days, yet here I am reciting fragmented prayers, the months and birthstones without stopping at rubies in July. So I think the speaker is sort of like reminiscing on childhood in this, and like the carelessness that comes with being younger and not realizing everything that's going on around you.
I thought that I also chose Spanning the Spectrum. I'll read it as my last poem then. It doesn't really matter if we chose the same. I thought that it was a first generation immigrant to whatever country she's in
Ah, that checks too. Yeah, with
because
the in a language that wasn't my mother's.
yeah, I was like, oh, a first generation, well, I don't know if it's America, so I was like a first generation American. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good at poetry, so I'm like, I'm not really sure what it talks about other than, I don't know.
I guess with the title, it could also suggest that like if we're going off of the first generation thing, it could be like despite all the changes of like where they've lived, they're still under the same sky.
I think rubies is the birthstone for July, but I don't know. I don't know what any of it means. I'm not gonna lie. I was just like, oh, okay. Uh, First generation immigrant. That's all I knew. I chose Tangled in Twine. Maybe that's one you chose as well. It's just on 64, the one right next to it. Unlike explanations, cubes have six sides. I see only five. Don't call me a drunkard. The wine is postured for pouring. The red Siamese birds search for crumbs in a footed bowl. The frenzied sand fly swarm left. No one joins me for dinner. My severed head distracts them with its ability to drift over harbors and empty fields away from my vertebrae. It seeks only the vineyard. I hold the knife, blade down ready to gut my father's blue fish. I too was caught in his nets. And for that, I put that the tone is defensive and hostile because it's like,
Mhm.
don't call me a drunkard. I just
Yeah.
like, I'm an alcoholic, not a drunkard. And that its speaker is someone's child who's lonely and upset with his father being feeling like he's held captive because he says he too was caught in his fish's nets and he's
Mm.
some guy on a boat about to gut his father's blue fish, so he's out.
Mhm.
He's a lonely drunk that's, I guess, doing his father's work on a boat instead of
I like
out
that
having
interpretation.
dinner with friends. That's what I think.
This it makes me think of God, what's the word? I'm blanking now. Oh no.
Doesn't,
Um just like the tone because it's so defensive and like that final line, I too was caught in his nets, makes me think that the father was also an alcoholic. And so now people are like, you're just like your father, you're just a drunkard.
yeah, sounds like a fisherman's story to me.
Let's see. I'm going to read The Moon Painter. Without
Oh, this
gravity, I.
one's different. So the strophe and stanza things that we're supposed to talk about, all the other ones are strophes because they're just a paragraph. This one, the
Oh
spacing is different
yeah,
than everything else. So
that's
it has
true.
stanzas.
It all based on the punctuation, it's all two sentences.
Yeah.
um, Without gravity, I paint the moon, how the strokes swirl like whispers in preferred shades and hushed tones. Lavender emerges always in the backdrop of my dreams ooh, when I am
Somnambulatory.
somnambulatory. There we go. As good a guess as any. The knife spreads the subdued beams in unbroken coronas. My footsteps fade like laughter, swift then elliptic. I stifle those late night yawns in prismatic searches, trails of syllables converge. The curtains printed with words billow until they become voluminous with meaning. This whole poem kind of reminds me of like insomnia, just like how you're lying awake waiting for sleep and your mind is just killing time. Like without gravity, I paint the moon, like perhaps like visualizing painting the moon and the
Yeah.
last
It's a
lines with the
poem, so I know she
curtains.
can't possibly be talking about actually painting the moon.
But yeah, that's what I thought. The speaker could be anyone suffering with insomnia or struggling to sleep, I think.
I think you're right that it's probably about insomnia and like all of her poems are about the moon. One of my questions was like, do you really like the moon? Like,
Who doesn't love the moon?
it's like very, very poetry thing to write about the moon. No sleep. My next one is the endless vocabulary on page 67.
Thank
Arrayed
you for
with
the.
colorful little sparks, the lavender lantana erupted out of the ground, a tangle of thin branch and vine. Another page torn without perforation, the cosmos brighter than any kumquat, dropped seeds to replant and proliferate, the endless vocabulary of creation, papaya, pear, pomegranate, our catalog of pulp. It was only a matter of time. The knowledge, the awareness loomed larger than the slant, rhyme of saffron and bovine before we shared the perfect peach. So I believe that this poem is comparing fruit to poetry,
Mm.
the endless vocabulary of poetry, and your words are your fruit for whatever. And the speaker in this one is more than one person because they use the pronoun we. So
Mm.
it's like we as poets use our words
Mm.
like fruit, blah, blah, blah. How artsy.
I like that interpretation a lot. I like how your thought process is so different from mine because when you were reading it, it made me think of like Adam and Eve and like the apple.
Hmm. I'm very bad at poetry, so I only choose poems that I could actually talk about. I was like, if I didn't have any clue, I was like, nope, nope, skip, skip, not that
That's
one.
so fair. I feel like years of like dissecting song lyrics prepared me for this class.
Probably. It's just poetry
Uh,
sung.
right. And then the last poem that I'm gonna read is As If Turned Upside Down on page 73. Unable to live with dark spots in the stylized, my eyes had their revolution. The flowers bloomed short of shadows, unable to rise to their full stature, grazing the ankles rather than shoulders. The cosmos opened and dropped seeds the size of splinters for red horses and father-son acrobats to appear, to tumble and stretch toward the sun, to lay out their dirty carpet with unbridled edges, to perform like the greatest source of poetry of all time. This gift of honest hues and dappled light was what I dreamed, the assumption of 10 crows, black arches flying over grain days before harvest, and a hurled moon stopping over a second birthplace between pinnacles of leafless trees. I honestly don't remember what I had written down for this one. I just remember liking it a lot.
Well, let's think about it for a second then.
I think like the what was that first one I read? It has a sort of like childlike wonder to it,
It does, like
sort of like idealized,
circusy or
mhm, like dreamlike
naturey.
almost. Turned upside
Cosmos opened with drop seas the size of splinters for, I think it's like something about like food or something, or
down.
trees. It's like drop seeds the size of splinters for red horses. I don't
Mhm.
know.
The title, as if turned upside down, makes me think like they're trying to change their, like the speaker's trying to change their perspective on life. So maybe that maybe they have like a more pessimistic view and outlook on life, and they're trying to change that by having like this dreamlike, childlike sort of perspective.
Titles are important. So I'm going to switch my next one and choose a random one on the page right next to it. Here I go. 72. The Underground Hour. Gold appears even with one wing, tufted in deep blue down, a blue more authentic than ink. I am airborne, an hour underground, free of measure, not meant for precision or punctuality. I levitate hovering above a milky village, windows naked, lanterns dimmed, on a moonless night when lovers kiss, a couplet of arrival or departure untouched by the pendulum. So I think it's about a bird flying at either sunset, because gold appears and then wings and the blue colors of birds, and she's airborne. And there's that moonlight junk again. So it's either about a bird flying or the speaker pretending that they're floating around. One of the two.
I think it could be like the speaker could be on a plane and looking out the window and kind of like daydreaming about what people are doing on the ground.
Yeah. Man, I don't like poetry. So,
The I think what makes it like less intimidating is realizing like your interpretation cannot be wrong because
that's
it's
right.
interpretation.
That's right,
So
Professor.
there's
Can't
like
be wrong. A's.
just like a little comfort in that because clearly we like interpret things differently based on like our experiences and stuff. So
That's
I
what
think
makes them good poems, is that they can be interpreted
exactly,
more than one way. Well,
exactly.
thanks for being my partner this semester,
Of
and I'll get this
course.
uploaded. Bye.